Hi guys, so we're on chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. I hope that you've been keeping a summary of each one and that you've done a quick read of that before we jump in. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with him. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." Then there was a pause. Then, smash! The door was hit with such a force that it swung clean off its hinges. With a deafening crash, landed on the floor, and a giant man was standing in the doorway. His face was completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes glittering like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping that his head brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Could make us a cup of tea, could you? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen in fear. "Budge up, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeezed and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "Ah, here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up to the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw the beetle's eyes were crinkled into a smile. "Last time I saw you, you were only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mum's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir. You are breaking and entering." "Ah, shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa and jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hand, bent it into a knot easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste fine." From inside the pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth, and what he said was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "Toot, I haven't introduced myself. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Henry's whole arm. "What about that tea then, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. "I'd not say no to something stronger if you've got it, mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled crisp packet in it and snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but he drew back. A second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with a flittering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him. He thought he'd sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back on the sofa, which sagged under the weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pocket coat: a copper kettle, a squishy packet of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid, which he took a swig of before starting to make the tea. Soon the hut was full of sound and smell of sizzling sausages. Nobody said a thing whilst the giant was working, but he slid the first six fat, juicy, slightly burned sausages from the poker. Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great pudding of a son don't need fattening any more, Dursley, don't worry." He passed the sausage to Harry, who was so hungry he'd never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't explain anything he'd said. I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of his tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm the keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry?" barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadows. "It's them who should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learnt it all? Oh, what? Asked Harry. Oh, what? Hagrid thundered. Now, wait just 1 second. He leapt to his feet. His anger seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against a wall. Do you mean to tell me, he growled at the Dursleys, that this boy knows nothing about anything? Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school after all, and his marks weren't bad. I know some things, he said. I can, do maths and stuff. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, about our world, I mean. Your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Dursley! He boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. But you must have known about your mum and dad. I mean, they were famous. You're famous. What? My mum and dad weren't famous, were they? You don't know. You don't know. Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. You don't know what you are, he said finally. Uncle Vernon had suddenly found his voice. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there. I did the wrong voice. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, every syllable trembled with rage. You never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him. I was there, I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you've kept it from him for all these years. Kept what from me? Harry said eagerly. Stop! I forbade you, yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Go ball your heads, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was a silence in the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. A thumping good un, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed to Mr. H. Poppiter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin First Class. Grand Sorcerer. Chief Warlock. Supreme Mugwump. International Confederation of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await an owl by no later than the 31st of July. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. One of my favourite characters. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks. He couldn't decide what to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, What does it mean they await my owl? Galloping Gorgons, that reminds me, said Hagrid, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse. And from another pocket inside an overcoat, he pulled an owl, a real live, fluffy, rather ruffled-looking owl. A long quill and a roll of parchment with his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note which Harry could read upside down. Dear Mr. Dumbledore, give Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well, Hagrid. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped it in its beak, went up to the door and threw the owl out into the storm. Then he came back and sat down as though this was normal, as talking on the telephone. Harry realised that his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ashen-faced but looking angrily, moved into the firelight. He's not going. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a muggle like you stop him, he said. Oh, what? Harry said, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magic folk like them. And it's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles I've ever laid eyes on. He swore when we swore when we took him in that we'd put a stop to this rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. Swore we'd stamp the wizard out of him. You knew? Said Harry. You knew I'm a wizard? Knew, shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. Knew, of course we knew. How could you not be my dratted sister being what she was? Oh, she got a letter like that and disappeared off to that school. Came home every holiday with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this, Lily that. They were proud of having a witch in the family. She stopped to draw a deep breath and then went ranting on. It seemed like she'd been wanting to say this for years. Then she met that Potter at school and they left and got married and I knew you and of course I knew you would be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up and we got landed with you. Harry had gone very white as soon as he found his voice. He said, Blown up? You told me they died in a car crash. Car crash! Roared Hagrid, jumping up so angrily that Dursley scuttled back in the corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's outrageous, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in the world knows his name. But why? What happened? Harry asked urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said, in a low, worried voice. I had no idea when Dumbledore told me you might be in trouble getting hold of you, how much you didn't know, and Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but someone's got her. You can't go off to Hogwarts not knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you, mind. I can't tell you everything. It's a great mystery, parts of it. He sat down and stared into the fire for the first few seconds. It begins, I suppose, with a person called... But it's incredible you don't know his name, what with everyone in the world who knows. Who? Well, I don't like saying the name if I can't help it. No one does. Why not? Galloping gargles, Harry. People are still scared. Blimey, it's difficult. See, there's this wizard who went bad. Bad as you could go. Worse than worse. His name was... Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, I can't spell it. All right. Voldemort. Harry shuddered. Hagrid shuddered even. Harry wouldn't even know what's wrong. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard was about 20 years ago now. Started looking for followers. Got them too. Some were afraid. Some just wanted a bit of power. But he was getting himself all the power, all right. Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who you could trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange witches or wizards. Terrible things happened. He was taking over. Of course, some stood up to him. And he killed them. Horribly. One of the only safe places left to go was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one you know he was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school. Not just then, anyway. Now, your mum and dad were as good witch as any wizard I ever knew. A boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why, you know, who never tried to get him on side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want to try anything with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade him. Maybe he just wanted them out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up at the village where you were all living on Halloween 10 years ago. You were just a year old. And he came to your house and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty, spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's just that sad. You knew your mum and dad. That's the people you couldn't find anywhere. You know who? You killed him, and this is the real mystery of the thing. He tried to kill you, wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing by then, but he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead. That's no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful, evil curse touches you. Took care of your mum and dad, your house even, but it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill them. No one except you. And he killed some of the best witches in it, and wizards of the ages, the McKinnons, the Bones, the Prewitts. And you were only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he'd ever remembered it before, and he remembered something else for the first time in his life. A high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. I took you from the room down myself in Dumbledore's orders. Brought you to this lot. Load of old tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He'd almost forgotten that the Dursleys there. Uncle Vernon seemed to certainly have got back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid and his fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy. I accept there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating could have cured. As for all this, your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it. And the world's a better place. The world's better off without them, in my opinion. Asked for all they got getting mixed up with those wizarding types, just as I expected. I always knew they'd come to a sticky end. But at that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa, drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat, pointing at Uncle Vernon like he saw. He said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you one more word. In danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, Hagrid said, breathing heavily and sitting back down on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, said questions to ask, and hundreds of them. But what happened to Sorry, I mean, you know who. Good question, Harry. Disappeared. Vanished. Same night I tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery. He was getting more and more powerful. Why did he go? Right, there's only 4 pages of this chapter, but I am going to leave there because it is getting to 16 minutes. So write a summary. What has happened? What has Harry found out? So Harry's found out something very important here. What has he found out? Write that down, and thank you guys. We'll carry on. We are nearly at Diagonal Alley, which is a really cool place to visit.